Welcome to the American Intelligence Media on this day before the second most important election in America. And I am with my guest, Michael McKibben, who's going to be telling us how we're going to be putting out a call to action so that we can make sure that, again, just like in 2016, we are going to protect our votes. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Hi, good morning, Douglas.
I want to tell people the story a little bit about how I got to know you. One of the things that really surprised me as I was getting to know you I think it was just before the 2016 elections or somewhere thereafter, you mentioned to us that there were white hats involved in the 2016 election who helped in some way, which I can't technologically explain, but those white hats made sure that the tallies were not messed with once they were digitized and in the Secretary of State's office and then being sent from one county to the Secretary of State. And so there's ways that white hats went out in 2016 and helped make sure that the vote was not messed with electronically. Now that blew my mind because no one in the conclave could figure out how in the world Donald Trump won. We knew there was a landslide. We knew that he had got a tremendous amount of votes. But how was it that he was able to get through the corruption that we knew had been infiltrated in every presidential election, but for instance in the 2004 election with the Diebold machines, which were just completely rigged? And so in the 2016 election, they had the U.S. Digital Service running everything through the White House, and Obama said that the Homeland Security Director was going to be in charge, basically, of the election, which is, of course, not right. That's not right. Nothing about that is correct. That is not happening. The U.S. Digital Service is not the ultimate man in the middle for the election this time because it no longer is in the White House. And Homeland Security is still in charge of that election. So tell me.
We don't know that for sure, Douglas.
You mean the U.S. Digital Service?
It could be still the driver.
Well,
anyway,
we assume that we assume it's in the bunker, in the Obama bunker, which is very near the White House. And so we assume that they still have at least an ability to gather that information. We don't know whether they have the ability to manipulate it and change it. Now tell me, you're putting out a call to action with an article and this audio to say to people who understand these things what to do. Tell us, Michael. You're the ultimate white hat in terms of technology. Tell us what we can do to help secure this midterm election results.
Well, thank you for that vote of confidence, but this effort is many network engineers have been looking at this issue for a long time. And so the technical solution for how we stop voter fraud first required that a group of engineers determine what the problem was and how it was being done. And this group of people, of which I am one, is pretty confident we know how man in the middle is done now, and as well as the other types of voter fraud like fraction magic with the Diebold machines. But the most concerning way of fixing elections at a strategic level is the man-in-the-middle problem. And that man-in-the-middle problem, stated very simply, is a situation where a third party is given access, usually buried very deep inside an IT, an information technology contract for a state Secretary of State, and that person is given access to the data stream that occurs between a county board of elections and the state election tabulator, which is a computer. Sometimes when you say tabulator, people are thinking people are sitting around with a electromechanical machine punching in numbers, but no, it's just another computer that tabulates the reporting from the counties. And this man in the middle is able to intercept that stream, send it to a third party, or they may be the third party, look at the numbers, change the numbers however they like, then pass that signal on to the state tabulator. So the state computer actually thinks the information's coming from a county board of election when in fact it's coming from this third party. That's how the fraud occurs. And that has been proven multiple times. including in the state I'm in, the state of Ohio. So the issue is, what do we do about it? Because what we have seen, and many of the people involved with attempting to correct the election fraud occurring in their states have filed various forms of complaints with their secretaries of state, and in most cases they get rebuffed. And from a citizen's viewpoint, that makes no sense at all when you consider that a free and fair vote is the purview of we the people. It is not the purview of a government agency or bureaucrats. And that took me a while to realize, because I had never even questioned the process. I just assumed in my past, that the secretaries of state were doing things honestly. And I'm not saying that every secretary of state is corrupt, but what it appears is that most of the secretaries of state, if they are not corrupt themselves, are allowing corrupt election procedures to occur. And so we started asking, well, what is the center of that particular problem? And it became clear that when we as American citizens want to vote, we want to make sure that our votes are counted in a bipartisan way, and that once that count occurs, that the election results are recorded and reported accurately. And so sometimes a Democrat's going to win, sometimes a Republican's going to win, sometimes a third party's going to win. But the point is, if you are a patriot, somebody who believes in our constitutional republic, then our interest is not in having one or the other candidate win, but in having a free and fair election. And that is the principle by which this call is being made by a group of network engineers who are basically recommending that, because our secretaries of state are not ensuring this bipartisan chain of custody in the election systems. Bottom line is, when your vote goes into bits and bytes of an election machine, no human being can see what's going on inside that machine, and so everybody's taking on faith that the information that's printed out is accurate, and there's no way that you can know that because it's all unseen. And so they've come up with all sorts of cockamamie explanations for it's validated by a third party at the federal level, at the Department of Homeland Security, or whatever. So this third party has verified that the election machine is not is reporting accurately. And how do you know that? How do you know that third party is not corrupt? So the bottom line is, we the people, the citizens, in a bipartisan manner, have lost control of the chain of custody in our votes. And so since that is, we're not going to paper ballots, the suggestion is being made that patriots who are network engineers specifically act on election night to prevent any access in the network, all legal, in a legal manner, to prevent third parties from getting access to the state election tabulator during the time the votes are counted. That is the bottom line, that we're calling white hats, American patriots, citizens who know how to deal with these issues, these security issues, in the internet, which is how most of these votes are being reported, would prevent third parties from getting access to our state tabulators. That's the basis of the call.
And it worked last time, and it can work this time. And now that we have basically put out the word through the entire alternative media that these machines can be hacked, that a high school student with a telephone using a PC Anywhere 2.0 application can hack into one of these machines and change votes, when we know that there's a criminal, basically a mafia, criminal, illegal election, I don't even know what to call it, system. The Democrats say We don't want borders. We allow criminals to come in. We allow criminals to vote. We have sanctuary cities, sanctuary states. Basically, all that is a criminal enterprise that allows criminals to vote for criminals who are telling the criminals that they're going to be supporting them and allowing them to continue. And so we know that we have dead people voting. We know that we have people crossing state lines. We know we have illegal aliens, 22 million in this country. So I suggest that at every single poll, that someone in a jacket that looks very official, very federal, with the letters ICE on it, stand at the poll. Or as Christopher Strunk said the other day, we need poll watchers. We need people just to stand there and look intimidating and notice that, only people wearing red hats go in and vote. And then when we see that the vote from that particular poll came out all Democratic, then we need to question that. For instance, when George Baby Bush was elected, they did exit polls that showed that statistically it was 1 in 300 million chances possible that the election was not fraudulent, and yet we allowed that election to go through. And that's
that information is now verified. That was a fraudulent election. And when you mentioned the Democrats earlier, this problem is not unique to Democrats. This is occurring among all of these insiders who work to manipulate the results, both for and against Democrats and Republicans. And so what we're observing is that there is a cabal that is both Republicans and Democrats that essentially sit in a back room and decide from election to election who's going to win and who's going to lose. And then the election results, with the avid election result reporting that pushes these fake narratives down to our mainstream media, they essentially make our elections one big shadow play where the real results are being obtained behind the scenes, and they really don't care whether or not the votes themselves are accurate or not. They'll change the numbers in any way they want. That's what's so infuriating to me, that I've lived my whole life watching elections and realizing it's not free, it's not fair. They're all being manipulated, and they have been our entire lives.
And as you say, it's bipartisan. For instance, you have Mitt Romney, who owns Hart Intercivic, that owns the voting machines in 17 states. I mean, if that isn't partisan, right, I don't know what could be.
Isn't it magical that nobody has brought that issue up at the Secretaries of State level and done anything about it? They keep, every time a complaint is made where the facts are presented, these state courts, usually the Supreme Courts in those states, find ways to brush all those questions under the carpet and put them off to a new election, and maybe even they'll start an inquiry, and then that'll go on for years until everybody gets tired of hearing about it, and then it goes away. That's clearly what's going on here. And what these white hats can do is, it doesn't guarantee that the vote will be totally fair, but it will be fairer, and it will be more accurate in reporting what's going on at the counties.
Exactly. And that's what we're trying to get at. We won't have a fair and honest vote until it is paper ballot, where you mark your thumb so that you only get to vote once, where you have an ID ahead of time, because you have to have an ID to get a job, folks. You have to prove that you're a citizen of the United States of America. So why wouldn't you have to do that to vote, the most sacred right that a citizen has? And why wouldn't we protect that right? But what we're saying is, yes, the Republicans are also into manipulating the machines. And yes, they also use illegal aliens for cheap labor. And so what we're doing is we're watching corruption on both sides of the aisle, and then they act as if it's fine, it's bipartisan, because in some states, literally, Mitt Romney, a Republican, owns the machines. In another state, Democrats own the machines. In another state, the rogue CIA owns it.
Well,
George
Lord
Soros owns it.
Mark Malik Brown owns the Smartmatic machines. He runs those, and he is a proven partner at a deep level, at the United Nations level, with George Soros. I mean, how much more corrupt can this be? And even when those pieces of information are presented in these state court cases against election fraud, they're ignored. over and over and over again.
Oh, yes. Just recently, last week, in one state, they pointed out the ES&S machines were making these horrible mistakes. And they said, oh, no, 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 this is the operator or the person who's voting. They just need to understand the way the machine works. Well, the machine actually votes for someone else than who you vote for. And then that's supposed to be the person is supposed to be an IT expert to know that that machine just has a little glitch in it. So you know what they said? Oh, don't worry, these machines are fine. We had them
they
all
were validated by the Department of Homeland Security in Washington, D.C. What's your problem? Move along.
In 2009. Yes. They looked at those machines 9 years ago and they said they were fine. Why would they look at them again? They're not going to look at any of the machines. And they're not going to look at the fact that Jimmy Carter, with Lord Malik Brown in Venezuela, developed the software that runs all of these machines, Optech. And Optech can be manipulated, especially when they're sending the information out. When they open a line and they enter the internet, they're 100% vulnerable. And anyone can, in fact, manipulate them. And so what we're working with is a broken system. And what we did recently is James Miller wrote a writ of mandamus in the state of Washington, and then Christopher Strunk wrote one, which he gave to Chief Justice John Roberts on Friday, a writ of mandamus demanding that we have paper ballot backups, because right now 5 states don't have paper ballot backups. So if we wanted a presidential election to have a recount, we can't. We can't ever do it. Why? Because
wait, Douglas. Wait, somebody hit a button on a machine, and the machine made a bunch of noise and printed out some numbers on a piece of paper. What's your problem? That's a free and fair vote. That's about what they did.
That is really
you
not
got a
far
problem
from
with
wrong.
that?
Well, when I watched
What's wrong with you?
I watched a junior high school girl sit at one machine after the next at the DEF CON convention, and some of them in less than 2 minutes, machines she's never even seen before, totally hacked and changed the vote count, the tally count in that machine.
Well, there is not an electronic programmer or software engineer worth his salt or her salt on this planet that would tell you in their heart of hearts that electronic voting is reliable.
And
they just can't do it.
No, they can't. We also have in 2016 pictures, videos of people who, at the top level, the IT people who work at the Secretary of State. When the tally came in to the Secretary of State, the machine was put into this secure area. A person walks in, the top IT guy with his phone, obviously using PC Anywhere, walks over to the locked chamber that this machine is in, plays around on his phone a minute, and then walks out. He adjusted the tallies.
Yep. That can happen anytime, anywhere, and not can. It is happening. There have been court cases where this stuff has been proven, so we're not talking theory here. So the question is, it's such a big problem, it's so widespread, the question is, what can be done to stop it? Well, clearly our secretaries of state have no will to stop it. It's clear now that we've been at this subject for so many years, and it's one that I didn't spend any time at all until about a year ago or 2 years ago on it. And it was more of a bunch of lawyers and politicians and bankers investing in this and that and the other companies and flipping those companies and reverse flipping those companies and sending them overseas and sending them back. So it totally obscured the ownership custody record of these machines. Well, now we've got, 6 to 10 key machines that are used in all of our states. And now that the secretaries of state have them, they're not letting them go. They're like a kid with a toy that they can't let go. And so what we, as citizens in this country whose vote is being obscured and reported fraudulently by these people that we have delegated this process to, have got to take this process back. And this is a remediation step. I agree with you. I think we need to go back to paper ballots and ink thumbs and one man, one person, one vote. And we've got to take legal and lawful steps to stop this third party changing of our votes after the county has, and now we're presuming the county is reporting it accurately, but we can't solve all these problems tomorrow. But this one we can solve tomorrow. All any electronic network engineer needs to do is look up the DNS numbers for their county board of election, and look up the DNS number for their state election tabulator, and do their magic in the public network, which is what they're all using to report these numbers, and prevent any third-party DNS accesses to the state tabulator other than our counties, and do that during the election. It'll guarantee or help guarantee the third-party man in the middle will be thwarted.
And if they notice any intervention, they record it. That's it.
Well, they don't know. They won't. They can block it.
Block it, yeah.
They can just block it, and they can record the DNS number it's coming from as evidence. But they can just block it so that person can't get in. And
yes.
Why should they be getting in? This is our most sacred act as American citizens.
Yes. And
we don't want third parties accessing our state election tabulator, period. It's our property to protect here, not the state's, not a bureaucrat. These bureaucrats have inbuilt biases. I mean, it's not their fault. They were hired and appointed by one party or the other, and they are not neutral parties. They are not our bipartisan chain of custody. We've let that go. We've got to take it back, and this is a good way or a good start.
So the White Hats stop the interaction, and if
just
they can
stop the link. It's not interaction. It's just stop the link.
Stop the link. Okay, and so
Right.
if it happens, can they record it so that they can turn those people in?
Well, they can record it. I mean, yeah, but what's the point? Well, once this avid teleprompter control and the way, as you have said many times, the mainstream media is manipulated to get these candidates to capitulate within hours of the close of the polls. Having evidence of the crime means it's going to be in a lawsuit that's going to go on for, in the case of the one in Ohio, for 7 years. So it's pointless to depend on the courts to protect our vote.
Wow.
Period.
That's quite an amazing thing to think that after all that was done in Ohio, that went nowhere.
Went nowhere. Not a single person was prosecuted.
Unbelievable. So what you're saying is just stop it dead in its track, which did happen with the 2016 election, and we are begging all the White Hats network managers to get out there and to do exactly what you just heard the other White Hats are doing.
Legally and lawfully.
Legally, lawfully.
We're not suggesting anything that can't be done in the public networks.
And we're also suggesting that everyone should be a poll watcher. And if you're watching a bus come across the state lines to come vote in your poll, turn them in. Call 911. Call whoever you have to. Call law enforcement. Call ICE. Call whoever you... If you're seeing irregularities in the election, Donald Trump, our president, has written an executive order saying we're supposed to turn them in. That's why Christopher Strunk wrote the writ of mandamus and turned it into the Supreme Court. And in that is the research that we're talking about here, Optech, how Optech works, how man of the middle works, how all of these corrupt machines work. And by the way, I would suggest that we could probably, I hadn't thought of this before, but if we simply took a tally of which states use which voting machines, I bet you that every blue state is owned by a blue person, and every red state owner of the machines is owned by a red person. I mean, I think that's probably going to be pretty clear.
What the Washington State experience showed is that you don't need to have your machine in all of the counties. You only need to have them in the swing counties.
Exactly. And so I'm suggesting...
So you might have a minority of the actual really corrupt machines in all of your counties, but you have control of them in the counties where the votes are really determined.
Which are usually large cities, which are sanctuary cities. Right. And so I would suggest that we can probably guess what machines have been placed where, and because we can predict what that machine is going to be inclined to give as a tally. But what we have seen with Trump was so unprecedented that places that were strictly blue turned red. This is incredible. We're seeing this happen all over the country now. And because the rule of law has come with a new sheriff in Washington, D.C., Donald Trump, it's a completely new day. During the 2016 election, it was completely rigged for Hillary. We've written about this so many times, and we've given you all the evidence and the U.S. Digital Service and the contracts that Hillary actually wrote and signed to have the template for winning be incorporated into the internet through Facebook and other social media. We have shown you the Russian collusion. We've named those people. We've shown you that everything that Robert Mueller said is complete nonsense. There was tremendous influence, foreign influence. The British influence through the Global Engagement Center produced those fake Russian ads. The Strategic Communications Laboratory that owns Cambridge Analytica had manipulated 44 elections before in America and helped the outcome of those before the 2016 election, and was massively involved in that. So,
Douglas, can I interrupt you there? I think one of the things that was always puzzling for me was how all of these different kinds of fraud were interconnected, and it's now clear what's going on here. Where you have these dead people voting, and you have people bust in, and you see the votes changed inside the machines themselves. And the main purpose of all of these, what we call tactical frauds, and this engineer group has studied this intensely. These are called tactical frauds. What those are designed to do is keep the vote reporting close. They don't really care whether their candidate's winning all the way through the election night reporting. The man in the middle is going to guarantee in the end that the vote is flipped and their candidate wins, or they're going to try to get that. But if the vote spread is too high in a county, and that the real number, for example, is being reported all evening, then it's very difficult for the man in the middle to flip the vote in the end. So the reason they're announcing right now, before the election, that all of the contested vote results are close, they need that impression on the public in order to preserve the ability to flip the vote in the end with the man in the middle. Whereas it might be, 49-51 all night, and then all of a sudden it flips to 51-49. Okay, people kind of get that and accept that. But if it's like 30-60, 70, then they can't flip that. The man in the middle can't flip it legitimately and not cause eyebrows to be raised. And so that's why they need these local frauds to keep it close, so that in the end they can flip the number if they need to. The man in the middle.
That was a big point for me to understand when you explained that to me. It really makes a lot of sense. Keep it very, 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 very close. And then, your candidate lost, just by a few votes. It makes us feel very powerful, those of us who went out and voted. But if we really understood what was going on, we wouldn't feel powerful at all. I have a solution. It's very, very, very simple. Everything from Watergate down to the creation of the White House rogue CIA is based upon election campaign fraud.
Yes, that's very clear now.
It's the money. We just have to stop it. We should give every candidate who wants to run money from the public, from the government. That's all you get. That's all you get. We need to stop allowing a George Soros to buy an election. We need to stop allowing super PACs. We need to bring, for instance, the Federal Election Commission and Hillary's misuse of literally hundreds of millions of dollars, but $84 million from the state of Maine alone. She gathered up hundreds of millions of dollars, funneled it in to her own account, and stole the money from Bernie and stole the money from basically the DNC. Election fraud is so fantastically obvious that it's a given. And so then when it comes down to manipulating the vote, that's a secondary consideration. And if that doesn't work and it's a presidential election, then we'll just manipulate the Electoral College. But what we saw is the votes with Trump were not as manipulated as before. The Electoral College that all said they were going to vote against him all voted the way they were supposed to. So things did move forward positively in 2016. So we are hoping that in this midterm election, which is so critical for Trump getting his agenda accomplished, we are asking that every white hat out there, every patriot, every Minuteman, every Minutewoman, every true patriot rise up for this election and not only vote and encourage others to vote, but be a poll setter and have that look on your face that says to somebody, are you really supposed to be here? Because you know what? We don't want them to be there unless they're supposed to be there. We want a true and free election. And it is our responsibility, we the people. It is not the responsibility of the federal government, the state government, no one else but us. And so, ahead of time.
Right, and we're calling for the network engineers to be poll setters at the state tabulator. That's a good analogy.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's exactly what we're doing. So, Michael, I just want to give you the final word on this, and I just want to thank the Patriots who have previously done this. Thank you for telling us about it, and thank you for spreading this word through all these engineers that know how to do these kind of things. And the rest of us, we're going to do whatever we can in whatever way we have as our capacities to make sure that our republic is restored and that the Second American Revolution is completed, Britain is kicked out of our country, and that we have free and open elections. Michael?
Yeah, it's kind of amazing that this fraud, because it's so complicated, it's way beyond most people's experience to know what to do about it. And in the end, this network fraud, this network man-in-the-middle fraud can't be accomplished or can't be stopped by anybody but network engineers. And so that's what we're asking. This group of network engineers is asking every white hat, every person who believes in a free and fair election, to put a ring around their state election tabulators and prevent third-party access to those computers on election night, because nobody else has any business being in our state secretaries of state election systems other than our counties who are reporting. And that's really what we want to accomplish.
Thank you, Michael. And thank you ahead of time to all those network managers, those white hats, those patriots, and everyone get out and vote and make sure that the red tsunami washes over that blue puddle of mud water that they call the Democratic Party.
Amen.
Well, Michael, with an update on the election results that are coming out of the mines, the gold nuggets that you're digging up, to tell us a little bit more about the way that the election rigging is working. Can you give us, shine up one of those nuggets and tell us what that newest find is about?
Yeah, some of our researchers were just finishing up the draft of the document that is being published by this group, and they were given an example of how network engineers could identify how to detect if any sites on the internet were accessing a state's election computers from the county to the state. And they were just given an example of a Florida county in the county where Tallahassee, Florida is, their capital, which is where their Secretary of State's computer is also. So they started digging into the records, and lo and behold, they discover in looking up what's called the Domain Name Service Number, which is DNS number, and that's basically the street address for every computer on the internet. They discovered that the Secretary of State for Florida hosts their site out in California, which one has got to ask, are there no competent network engineers and computer engineers in Florida? Why would they be subcontracting the hosting of their most important election data in San Francisco, California? So then we look up and find that the site is registered to a company called Cloudflare. And this Cloudflare company is quite interesting when you look at their investors. And a quick look at Wikipedia. Let me read you what Wikipedia says about the history of Cloudflare. I'll read you the most recent funding round. The most recent funding round in December 2014, Cloudflare raised $110 million in a Series D round led by Fidelity Investments, with participation from Google Capital, Microsoft, Qualcomm, and Baidu. Now, there are other investors that are on this suspect list. But what can you tell me, Douglas, about these particular companies in relation to the deep state shadow government and the SES?
They're one and the same. I mean, you might as well just say Highlands Group or In-Q-Tel or
Exactly.
DARPA or, it's all the same group of people. It's not really a big group. There's plenty of space for them in just one FEMA camp if we just took that one technological cabal out.
Yeah, it also includes New Enterprise Associates, Pelion Venture Partners, Venrock, Union Square Ventures, and Green Spring Associates. So here we have a company funded by known globalist enterprises managing the votes for the state of Florida. Do you think there's going to be a problem there?
And managing it in Dianne Feinstein's California, probably. Pelosi's California?
Exactly, in San Francisco.
So what we're talking about is globalist, but literally this is probably, if we look hard enough, it's probably just going to be some kind of Chinese courtesy message that's being sent, so that every single time someone votes in America, it has to go through the Chinese Central Committee. I mean, Silicon Valley's been bought out by the Chinese. So
the presence of Baidu, Baidu, which is a combination of a search engine like Google and a social networking site like Facebook in China, is prima facie evidence of foreign manipulation of a U.S. election. How can you conclude anything else?
And as we know, the election often comes down to Florida. And so the very beautiful piece of gold nugget that you brought up here just shows that when they play this game that, everything is going to hang upon the very vote in Florida and it's going to come down to literally a few thousand votes and then the whole election is going to be, all determined by that. Well, that's because the Chinese must like it to be very, a close race, exactly as you pointed out earlier in this conversation. They get it really close, and then it's like a flip of a coin who really wins, because they're both really a uniparty, whether it's in the past or Republican, Democrat, same thing. So in Florida, the vote is fixed by Chinese globalists in Silicon Valley. Let me see if I got that right.
By the way, let me add to that. One of their awards and recognitions that they identify on Wikipedia is this. In 2012, Cloudflare was recognized by the World Economic Forum as a technology pioneer. Now, doesn't that warm your heart?
I'm just waiting to see the beautiful, young, cardboard cutout Silicon Valley warlord or war lady that is going to, represent this newest faction of the Chinese. It's the same old story.
Matthew Prince.
Oh, Matthew
Lee Holloway
Prince.
And Michelle Zatlin.
Oh, very Prince. I like that. He's got a nice last name, so I'm sure he's fine. And so, therefore, I feel good as long as it's a young person who, brilliantly invented new technology.
In 2009, by the way.
Oh, okay. So probably right. Maybe Dude Zuckerberg was on a vacation in Florida, and he just decided, and he had a few moments, and so he wrote the app for the Florida Elections Commission digital giveover to China through Silicon Valley. Yeah, got it. That's no problem. Basically, what you'd come to expect.
A 2009 company's got 69 footnotes on Wikipedia. It's quite impressive. These guys are geniuses.
I always love it when these young geniuses never did anything. They get a company, and then all the same big people invest in it and then it gets an IPO, goes on the stock market, and they turn from millionaires into billionaires overnight. Same old
By the way,
story.
it was founded in July 2009, which was exactly the time when Hillary was contracting with Facebook for the template for winning elections. So the timing is perfect.
Well,
And they have offices in San Francisco, London, Singapore, Champaign, Illinois, Austin, Texas, Boston, and Washington, D.C.
and undoubtedly, the one in San Francisco is across the hall from Dianne Feinstein. I always call her the wrong name because, really, she's the Democrat from China, isn't she? I mean, she's the Democratic representative of the Central Committee of the Chinese Communist Party. But anyway, so basically, like with Hillary's, all 780,000 of her messages sent a courtesy copy of every one of them to China. So basically, we're probably going to find that no matter where you and your gnomes research, you're going to pull up these gold nuggets that show us that it goes back to what? Chinese intervention?
They say they're a security as a service. That's their motto. Doesn't that make you feel good?
The left wing always has the right words to get the right emotion. And usually they are the opposite of what they actually do. So I want you to go back down into the mines. And if you come up with another big chunk of gold like this, let us know, because we're going to later on, I believe, talk with you or some of your people about someone I know you really like, Chief Justice John Roberts. So,
well, I'm going to call the dogs off because Cloudflare is a big story that needs to get out.
Excellent.
This is huge. Florida's election is totally rigged. It's obvious.
Oh, my. Well, busting it before or afterwards, it's all cumulative. So we just have to keep doing the work until it becomes exposed. And when it becomes exposed, sometimes they're just so embarrassed they go away. But we would really like to see them.
Who dug this out.
Yes, exactly. And we want to thank all those white hat technologists, these Patriots cyber warriors who are going to help us with this election and keep digging this stuff up so that it comes to light, so that the scum on it can actually die when the sunlight shines upon it. So thank you, Michael, for your further research, and keep us updated as the election goes on and the election busting goes on.